I'm Asger. You can ask me anything. Today, someone asked me, is Elon Musk right that social distancing is fascist? So I'm going to try and answer this question. So Musk has made a series of comments on his Twitter account, and he's also done some interviews that were released to the press. So he's been, I don't know if he's been getting a hard time in the press. He seems to be so beloved by everybody that he can sort of get away with saying most things. So just a few highlights of stuff he's tweeted and said. He tweeted, "Free America now." He has described the situation of us being trapped in our homes as against all constitutional rights. He's also said, "Give people back their freedom.
Give these people air."
And recently, he described the situation as fascist. He was talking about people being arrested for going out. I just want to push back a little bit on some of this stuff. Being arrested for going out, I actually checked up on that. So at least in California, where he lives and where his main factory is, people aren't being arrested for going out. I read a little transcript of some comments that the California governor, Gavin Newsom, had given. He says, "We put social pressure on people. We don't use force." And even though it may feel like it's illegal to go out, that's really not the same thing as it being illegal. I mean, if it was just completely illegal to go out, you would be arrested or shot or something like that, I would definitely call that fascist. But I think it's a little bit of a stretch to describe the situation. I also can't help thinking that Musk has a personal stake. So he just released his third quarter reports, and then he comes out with this, give people back their freedom, because his factory is in a California county that has a complete lockdown of all non-essential services, of which his factory and their production line is counted. I just can't help thinking that he probably wouldn't take such a pessimistic stance if it wasn't for his own personal stake in all this. Now, that being said, with the new data that we have data ticking in every day, and it's actually really hard to even know what type of data we can trust. So if they only test people who are in a high-risk group, so this will in all likelihood skew the data, so it sort of yields a little higher results of virus occurrences, that is, than it may be in the general population if we tested everybody. But then again, I sort of followed this a little bit on the sideline, the data that is, and I looked at my home country, Denmark's data this morning, and it's interesting because Denmark is right next to Sweden, and as most of you will know, Sweden is pretty much just, they put out some guidelines, avoid other people to the extent that you can, but nothing has closed down, no schools, no businesses, everything is pretty much business as usual other than these recommendations that the government put out for changing social behavior just a little bit. And Sweden do have around 2.5 times as many deaths as Denmark, and these countries are, they're separated by a bridge. They're a few minutes away from each other. So there does seem to be a difference. But again, the general numbers that I've seen aren't quite as alarming as the mainstream media has sort of led most of us to believe. It doesn't mean that I don't take it seriously at all. I kind of do. And it's easy to make these arguments that, it's just the big corporations that want to open everything up again and put us all to risk. And that's probably true. They probably care more about their bottom line than you and me, for that matter. But having all non-essential businesses shut down, that is something that causes some pretty serious issues for many, many people, myself included. I had just spent a couple months planning a new company. I can talk about those details another day. But this, and then the outbreak happened, and then all these rules came out with social distancing and stuff. I had to just face that. Okay, I'll just postpone indefinitely the launch of this company if it'll even be feasible under these new circumstances, because it delivers a service that is not deemed essential. And I'm just one person, Brian. I can't imagine how many, just the local business in the area I live in here, they're struggling, But then again, other businesses are thriving. But there just seems to be like this very unfair mechanism at play here that really just makes some random businesses do really well under these new circumstances, and other businesses, especially small businesses, are just completely destroyed. I'm sorry, there's clearly a broken hummingbird right here. I mean, even if the US government had just done what Sweden has done, just put out some guidelines, maybe once a week Trump could have reminded everyone, don't go out to huge gatherings if you can avoid it. Maybe skip the cinema, skip the show, skip the NFL game, those types of things. That would have still hurt small businesses hard. I'm sure, obviously, I need a haircut. Would I have gotten a haircut if I knew that there was an increased risk of some weird virus going around? Probably not. I mean, I will grant Musk one thing though. I mean, as we get in the data, and by the data I mean the number of infected and the number of deaths among the infected and the number of deaths in total percentage of the populations in the various countries, it certainly seems that it is worse than the flu, but it is not significantly worse than the regular annual flus that we have globally. But here's the thing. When we enforce something like this, I mean, initially we didn't really know anything about it. Even the experts were pretty open about them not having all the necessary details to really determine what's up and down here. But you can only cry wolf so many times. And that... yeah, I don't know if you can see Nina in the background, but she's crying wolf right now. But you can... okay, so just back to my point. You can only cry wolf so many times. Now that we seem to be at a level where it wasn't as catastrophic as we thought, maybe we should consider how many times can we enforce scenarios such as this one before people stopped taking it seriously. People took this very seriously. Really, I mean, I'm actually sort of impressed almost with the response of the general public. Even people who are skeptical, even the people who say, oh, it's created in a lab in Wuhan, or it's man-made, or Bill Gates made it, or whatever. I mean, even those people have been practicing the guidelines, as far as I know, as far as I can tell at least. And I mean, that's pretty positive. But I think it is a real danger, because at some point we will have like some sort of super flu or super bug. I guess about 6 months ago I listened to Sam Harris's podcast. He had some expert on, I think he had 2 experts on actually, on these types of diseases, not specifically coronavirus or anything along those lines, but they were just talking about this. More and more people are becoming resistant to antibiotics. That's another thing we have to deal with. But I could see that if we enforce very strict guidelines in a scenario that isn't really as deadly as we thought, it could ultimately complicate things a lot when we have a true epidemic, when we have a new bubonic plague or something like that. So that's certainly something I want to consider. Now again, the other point I want to make here is, to me, this is not a question of wake up, people. It's a fascist state. I mean, it is a little fascist-y, sort of. But as long as I can legally leave my home and, in theory, do what I want, I think it's just a very strong choice of words to call it fascism. And I think Elon Musk deliberately plays into this narrative that many people in the US have. Many people are very skeptical towards the government. They don't really trust the government, regardless of which bloc is in the Oval Office. And so it just strikes me as some cheap points in a sense. I think there are a few states where it is in fact illegal currently to go out. I am against that. And again, we still need to look at this data. Even compare. So I compared the Swedish data to the Danish data, and I think the Danish and the US data, apart from one being huge data set and the other being very small, I think the numbers themselves are sort of more or less identical. But it actually also raises an interesting question. What is the function of government? Isn't the function of government really to protect its people? I mean, there might be some other elements that you want to add to that, but I would say that's one of the most basic functions of any government. And of course, a government needs to respond to a crisis like this, and there are different interests here. There's the interest that not too many people will die. That's a really obvious one, right? But still, in a country where you have to pay for healthcare yourself, I'm for universal free healthcare, as you may hear between the lines here. But if the citizens aren't able to get to open or run a business or to put food on their tables, that is sort of also problematic. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where I stand on that. I mean, so some of Musk's criticism is justified the way I see it, but I can't help thinking that it just strikes me as a little too based in self-interest at this stage. That's it for now. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to this channel, give it a like, why not? And yeah, doesn't cost you anything, but it has value to me. And stay tuned until Sunday, where I'll see you again. I do videos on this channel Sunday through Thursday. So have a good one. Thanks for watching. Cheers.